Welcome, Jamie. Let's start with an easy topic. Your wild, vulnerable, interesting, entertaining journey through debt.
Oh yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Very light. As I've shown on my social media, I'm not very good at small talk, so this is perfect for me.
Great. Let's just, no chaser. Let's skip that. Go straight to it.
um, yeah, so I've been in credit card debt for a long time, over a decade. That number has fluctuated up to like almost $20,000, but more than $18,000, and for a long time while I was getting into it, I was working as a journalist, which is a notoriously prestige, low paying industry,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of living as though I was not a journalist living in New York City, on that kind of salary. And during this whole time where I was getting further and further into debt, my credit limit was getting raised, and I was just sort of spending sort of blindly. I always thought of my debt as this thing that I could maybe deal with later,
Mm.
and this thing that was not really having an effect on me. It was just a matter of fact. It wasn't. It wasn't anything. It wasn't good or bad. It just was something that I didn't have to deal with. I would deal with it some other time. And I got laid off from my job in 2021. I had worked there for 7 years and change. And that was a huge shift. Obviously, it was like this suddenly my life was sort of turned upside down from what I had grown really comfortable and accustomed to. And I was suddenly freelancing. I had to figure out how much money was coming in, how to have insurance, all these things that I was really privileged to not have to really think about, or I wasn't thinking about before.
Right.
And I had almost hit my max on one of my cards, and I just sort of had this. I think I have to call it a breakdown. I just sort of all at once was like, I have to figure this out, and something sort of cracked open. And once I started talking about it and thinking about it, I realized not only is it something that was affecting me the entire time, but it's something that affects every single aspect of my life and my mental health and my relationships with people and my ability to be present and my ability to do anything, to make art, to maintain my friendships and my relationships. It was all tied up in this avoidance of facing the reality of my situation, which was that I was in like $20,000 of credit card debt. So that's sort of how it started.
Was creating TikTok content designed to be cathartic, or did you have a goal in mind?
Yeah, it's so fun. I've been talking about this a lot because I'm currently working on a project about debt, and so we're going back in time, sort of like to when this all started. And it was more, from my viewpoint, it was more that I am a reformed theater kid. I
Mm-hmm.
went to performing arts high school. I have always been a person. I've never been accused of being someone who doesn't talk enough. Like I always kind of talk too much, and it felt like the way to hold myself accountable was to make it public in some way that wasn't just
Mm-hmm.
me. And honestly, I don't know if people believe this when I say this, but TikTok at the time felt kind of anonymous to me because
Yeah.
I'm going to be 35 in 2 weeks, and all my friends are on Instagram. And I knew people on TikTok, but I didn't really, I guess, understand. I certainly didn't understand how it worked in terms of how quickly things can blow up and go viral. And so it felt like just enough accountability without overexposing myself, because I was really afraid to tell people that I was in debt. But it seemed like, oh well, these are people that I don't know, so it doesn't feel like it's high stakes. Like on Instagram, it's my family and my friends, so I could possibly really keep track of it there.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how it started.
Anonymous accountability. I totally understand it.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of like likened it to when I was younger and I had like a Zanga. I don't know if you were of the Zanga
Mm-hmm.
era.
Zanga,
Um,
GeoCities, yes.
yeah, live journals, just ways to
Mm-hmm.
be public about something without like being completely feeling like I was being completely vulnerable about it somehow.
It's how I felt early days of Vine.
Hmm.
Before it blew up, I was like, "Oh, cool! I'm just gonna mess around with this," and then something would get like a million views. I'm like, "Oh no!"
Shit.
I got
Like, oh right.
now I have expectations. Ugh.
Exactly. This was not just like an online diary.
Right, right. But I can absolutely understand that. I think the interesting thing when I interview people on this podcast is sometimes it's very intentional, but that's rare. Most often it's kind of accidental in some ways. It's the intent is there, the idea is there. Clearly you have the talent to do it and to make it resonate, but the thought isn't there, right? But yes, I mean, for people who are not familiar, if you watch two of the videos, you quickly realize the tone is hilarious. It's incredibly vulnerable, and it's just a very random day in the life.
Thank you. Yeah, that's how it started. I realized that that was what was resonating with people. I think what when I was seeking out content about personal, I wasn't even seeking it out, but what I was seeing is a lot of people who used to be in debt and now they want to tell you how to get out of it. And I was like, well, we're all the people that are like fuck ups like me who are just trying to get out of it in real time. Like, I don't want to see this aspirational content about debt. I want to see the real content about debt. And I wasn't finding it. And so I just started making it. And those were the things that kind of really started to blow up because in the beginning, my initial idea was just to do a month of no restaurants and no shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to document that. And the things that people were really enjoying were just like kind of being a part of the day to day, not necessarily like, here's how I am not getting out of debt. It's like, here's a picnic I went on because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not spending money on restaurants, or I had a potluck. Like, here's what I made for this potluck. It's like more about the relationship and the connection than it is about like learning about how I'm getting out of debt. I mean, there are pieces of that too, but I think
Yeah.
it's really about like the connection more than anything else.
Right. The key to it is it's vulnerable and it's personal. But if somebody gets a takeaway from that and goes, "Oh yeah, okay, I could go," because the thing I was thinking about when you were saying that is you're creating content about not going and doing things or not doing less
Yeah.
stuff. You're like, so if you were solely content driven, you'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, this is how I spend a quiet night with my
Yeah.
cats.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I have those thoughts. I'm like, why does anybody want to see that I'm like sitting on my couch, like not putting away my laundry? But that is what people want to see because it's what I
Yeah.
want to see. I want to feel like the content I consume, obviously there's room for everyone and there's room for aspirational content too. But mostly I want to feel like, oh, I'm not the only person that didn't put my laundry away, even though I did it 3 days ago. Like something as innocuous as that. It's like,
Yeah.
I've worked in journalism for a long time. The only thing I ever really cared about doing was creating things to help people feel less alone and more seen in whatever their experience is. And this just sort of became an extension of that, accidentally.
What I'm learning, and I think this is going to be a key takeaway for me in 2024. And it was one of those things when you start to look at something, you start to realize this has been prevalent for a long time, but it's an era of relatable, vulnerable expertise that I think people absolutely want. And it's partly due to technology and the accessibility, right? Because if there
Yeah.
wasn't social media, you can't really do that, right?
Yeah.
And especially, and if there wasn't the ability for TikTok to, find somebody random at any point, right?
Hmm.
It's not
Hmm.
really about building a following incrementally. It's just about did you put out something that was interesting? Did you
Right.
fight a bobcat that day? Did
Right.
you
Right.
what
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
did you do today that might
Yeah.
be of interest?
Are
And
you like the cutest dog I've ever seen doing something very cute?
yes. I mean, that's the thing with TikTok, right? There's ASMR TikTok, which I've joked about, but there's lawn TikTok. There's like lawn
Oh,
mowing
familiar.
ASMR. Yeah.
I'm into that. I'm into that.
Yeah. So I mean, there are if there's a thing and there's a rabbit hole, people are going to go down it, and that's what makes it super fun. But I think the other part of relatable and vulnerable expertise is that it is a pushback to what you were kind of alluding to, which is that people would kind of just either be or pretend to be the authority on a topic. Like, oh,
Mhm.
follow me and I will lead you to debt free heaven. Like, it doesn't
Ah,
really
yeah.
work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And this is something that this was like the extension of sort of having this realization, starting to make this content, connecting with
Yeah.
people, and then having these realizations that I looked at debt and money as so personal and so like my own problem that I couldn't deal with, that something was wrong with me. And instead of looking at it, in the broader sense, which is to be like, well, why are so many people in this situation in the first place? If there are so many people who are saying, if you just do this X, Y, and Z thing, you're going to get out of debt. Like, why is anyone still in debt?
Hmm.
So it's like, there's something else going on here that's not just about the personal piece. I don't pretend like I didn't get myself into debt. I don't, try to make people think that like it's all the system's fault.
No,
But I don't think we acknowledge enough that there's more than one thing going on here. And that's
absolutely.
been my goal as of late. It's more like, okay, everyone knows I have debt now. Everyone knows I'm trying to like readjust my spending patterns and, change my habits to take care of this debt, but also sort of start to question why so many of us are in this situation in the first place. Whether that's because people are not making enough money to live, or because, you have deep rooted mental health issues like I had that made it hard to say no to things. And so you end up spending money you don't have because you can't say no. It's like, what are all the other pieces here that we're not necessarily considering when we talk about being in debt? It's like every piece of advice is like you, like what about us? Like what's going on with us? you know?
Well, things don't exist in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to account for the variables of stress, mental health, extenuating circumstances. The interesting thing about when you talk about the system is that the system has resources; they are available, but the enticements are always going to be easier to find than the resources.
Oh yeah.
You're running a business. That's understandable. You'll point to them. You'll make people aware, but not as aware as you're going to make a commercial about, hey, go buy this thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I keep telling people the thing, and I keep hearing from people, the thing that ends up getting many people into debt is that you're sort of tempted with this, elusive sign-on bonus, and you're going to get 60,000 extra sign-on bonus points if you
Mm.
spend $4,000 in the first 3 months. Okay, well, what if I don't even have $4,000 and I shouldn't be traveling anyway because it's not part of my budget right now? Like, you're just sort of enticing people with this thing that's ultimately not going to serve them, because then your credit limit gets raised, and then all of a sudden, no, it's easy to use a credit card for things. I'm going to use it for something else. It's like, it's a slippery slope.
To the 14 retailers who I have things sitting in a cart that I have not bought and that are probably their programmatic advertising is just flipping out because they're like,
Oh,
but
sure.
it's been in the cart for 9 days.
Hmm.
Why isn't he on here at 11:30 at night on
Yeah.
Instagram? What's he? Why doesn't he want to buy it? It's because I'm like, logically I get enticed. I'm like, oh, I could save 60%, 60% of I don't need to get, right.
Right. And of what? And that's a whole other, we could talk about that on a whole other hour of podcasting. It's like, what is even a sale anymore when like everything is on sale all the time? Like, what does that
Oh,
even mean?
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Everything is marked up to then be marked down. That is
Yeah.
a true principle in retail. But that does play to my Dutch roots that say, oh boy, I'm Dutch and from the Midwest. I should absolutely try and try and find a deal, and then not
Yeah.
just get the deal, but brag about said deal to
Oh,
as many
absolutely. I mean,
people as I can talk to.
listen, Dutch Midwest, New York Jew, like we all have something that's telling us to like get a bargain. Like, I
Hmm.
was raised in the aisles of like a TJ Maxx or a Loman's. This is like it's in my blood, it's in my DNA. So I totally get that.
There's so many. The best part of like specifically, this is a tangent, but the best thing about like a TJ Maxx or Marshalls is when you get like not a clothing item, but if you're just getting like cosmetics or soap or something else, like that's not going to be there again. It's like a one
Oh
time
yeah.
thing. So if you find something you like, it won't return.
No.
You're like, well, this is a cool moment in time.
And it's playing so much to your scarcity mindset because, sorry, now I'm going on a tangent, but my
Hmm.
mom got this leather jacket at TJ Maxx. My mom and her friends go to TJ Maxx for sport. Like, this is like an
Maxinistas.
activity. They're Maxinistas. And she got this leather jacket once, and then my grandmother really liked it, so she wanted one. And they went to,
Hmm.
I think they must have
Yep.
gone to 5 TJ Maxxes in one day just trying to find this leather jacket.
They
And
are
of
not
course they didn't
universal.
find it. You don't find it. So it's like there's this bargain hunter mindset that is so ingrained that
Hmm.
it's like it's more important than anything else. More important than having the money to buy something is the fact that you got it on sale. So it's like that it really dictates the way that you are for your life when you're trying to buy stuff as an adult, or it is for
I
me.
I can absolutely see somebody writing a Craigslist misconnections post just about something that they wanted to get but didn't get at a TJ
Yeah,
Maxx slash Marshalls.
totally, totally.
That exists. So you get into this process of vulnerability, of sharing your day, and when does it trigger to, okay, now I can and want to help?
Yeah, it just sort of slowly became really obvious to me that the story was so much bigger than me. When I started, as I said, I was just holding myself accountable, and it sounds even silly to say this now after, all these years of doing this work, but I felt genuinely isolated and alone in this experience and in shame because I wasn't talking about it
Yeah.
with other people. And I assumed that nobody else was dealing with the same kind of issues that I was, even though, I don't want to misquote the real number, but there's like $16.9 trillion of credit card in the a debt in the US in 2022. Like, it's sort of a universal topic at this
Mhm.
point. And there had been like sort of rumblings, like I'd been asked to write essays, and I've been doing a bunch of like little things, and the idea of doing a bigger project, or a podcast or something sort of started to bubble up. And at first I was like, no, like I'm not going to be a person that like gets on a podcast and tells you how to fix your debt. Like that's just not,
Right.
it's not my brand. It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be authentic to the work that I'd already been doing. Um, but my writing partner and I started having these longer conversations about the implications of debt on society on a larger scale. And sort of all these things that we've already been talking about, the mental health implications, the way that the society is built up to for us to sort of fail at having financial freedom. And so it became that became more interesting. That became like, oh, if we're gonna do this, we don't want to do it the way that it's being done currently. We want to just make this a much bigger conversation than my story, or helping just a couple of people with very specific, like everybody's different, every story is different, right? So it's not about here's how you get out of debt. It's about like, how did we get here in the first place, and how do we
Yeah.
start to like question why we're here in the first place.
Well, that's the baseline, right? It's not, you have to, it's like they say, like, you can't be in a good functioning relationship until you like yourself. You
Hmm.
can't really be in a good relationship with this until you acknowledge what it is, where you want to be, and that you have community for it, right?
Oh
That's
yeah.
that's the thing that people tend to not realize about a lot of different things, is that we don't we have their community is there, but there are a lot of things that people don't want to talk about because
Yeah.
there's shame involved.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be. Especially when it's universal, right?
Hmm.
With money, if you are, almost everyone is thinking about money in one way or another. And if you're not, you're lucky and awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
Continue to listen to the
Bye.
podcast. Maybe
Yeah,
sponsor
yeah.
it too while you're at
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
No, but
seriously.
yeah, but that's true, right? If the universal thing is that we're all in a different place about money. The other thing too is that when it comes to content, you were kind of talking about, there are unintended consequences of consumer marketing, right? That drive you to kind of have this
Yeah.
urge.
Okay. Oh
There's
yeah.
unintended consequences of the
I don't
attention
know. I
economy.
don't know. I don't know if they're unintended all the time. That's the other piece
No,
of
those are
it.
intended. Those are intended, and
Yeah.
I've probably been guilty of contributing to them. But
Sure. We all are. Yeah.
also the attention economy, and just social media in general, right? That, there are a lot of things that are designed to keep our attention, but they also create anxiety. There are all kinds of pushes and pulls and unintended consequences or intended consequences. But
Hmm.
this is kind of the place we're living in. I think it's so important to showcase what is real and what is
Hmm.
happening, rather than what is aspirational. I think we've
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other part of what kind of pushed me and us to want to do this is like, um, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
I get to edit. We're good.
Okay, cool. It's like I wasn't thinking about all these other factors when I started thinking about my debt. And it was like, oh, this is a like a situation that so many people are in, and I don't think that people are even aware of some of the ways in which they're being, you know, um, pulled into this situation, right? A lot of the time, and B, like certainly not acknowledging it on like a wider level. Like again, it's like the mental health piece. It's like I've been dealing with anxiety and depression and mental health struggles my whole life. I had no idea that they were related to my money until I started
Yeah.
confronting my debt, right? Like I just thought I had anxiety, I had money problems. They were two separate problems. I had them in two separate like pockets in
Hmm.
my pants, and I was just walking around with both. And meanwhile, like they were just all it's all connected. And I think the only way to start to change something and to start to like question the status quo and to be like, okay, maybe there's a way to move forward that's not just like we're still in debt and we're still not talking about it, is to start looking at these things together versus like they're all just separate. And so that I think is one of our big goals in making this project, is to just like get the aware. You can't change something if you don't have awareness of it. So just sort of like getting it out on the table for people to start having questions and not just like, going along with things the way that they are.
Yeah, it's like acknowledging something, then figuring out how to kind of address it, and then, finding community. And
Hmm.
then if you put all those things into it, then you might be able to kind of go down the journey. Also, when you were making the
Yeah.
analogy about pants, I started thinking about, okay, they're both in the same pocket, but one's in that smaller, useless, why does that pocket exist
Yeah.
pocket that
Yep.
we all have.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
I don't
Now
use
I'm
that.
like, I had to pull it out of that one and put it in the regular pocket so it was
Yeah.
really together.
But now I'm like, again, I have focus issues, but I am also trying to think now, like, what was the purpose? I'm going to go on a deep dive after this podcast and figure out what was the purpose of said pocket, because at some point there had to have been a purpose. I
Yeah.
don't know
Well,
what it was.
now it holds all of the
Was it
fucks I don't
coins?
give about having shame about debt. I don't know. I actually, you know what? It's so funny because I worked as a fashion editor for like 7 years, and I know that we did some story about it years ago. I'll send it to you, but I don't remember.
It's gotta be wild. Yeah, but that stuff will fascinate me weirdly. I don't know why,
Yeah,
but
I understand.
say less, right? But when when you get feedback from people who follow you or are on a similar journey, how does that kind of impact a how you approach it, b the content, if it does or doesn't, and just kind of overall how you want to address the issue?
Yeah, it totally does. I mean, obviously it's the internet, so there are trolls. I get a lot of
That
negative feedback. Definitely, like I would say, if it's like 25% negative, 75% positive,
that's
which
good.
is lovely. And it's a little different. I worked as a journalist for 7 years, and I would get trolls, but it would be like under the guard of the name of it'd be like they were
Hmm.
trolling the website, and now there's no barrier. It's like they're just trolling me. And so it's like a judgment on me and my character and not the company that I work for, which
And
is
your very
strange.
personal situation, yes.
Exactly. And it's like my face and like it's like all just
Hmm.
me. And in the beginning that was tough, obviously. And I would get a little bit prickly, and I would answer, and I honestly think that that may have like helped me connect, because people were like also in like people. I think the like evolved thing to do is to like rise above and ignore those things, and I do
Hmm.
largely. But I think the reality is like, if it's terrible, it sucks, so you want to like have a response to it. So now I'm more laugh it off and just keep moving. But on the flip side of that, I hear from people that are like, I'm the first person they've ever told about being in debt. I'm just like a random stranger on the internet. It's like this is the reason I'm still doing this. I didn't want to be a debt influencer. I don't want to be like, this is
Hmm.
not like my life dream is to like only talk about debt for my whole life. Like the
Yes.
only reason, the reason to keep doing it is because I've like built these connections with people, and I'm sort of starting to realize that it worked for me to sort of change my viewpoint on not only my money, but like on myself. I like myself way more than I used to before I started talking about my debt, because I'm not under the impression that having debt makes me a bad person anymore. And so if I can do that for anyone else, then that's the reason why I keep doing that. And that's why we're making this project now. I'm working on this project.
Yeah, we went to school in the 90s, so I'd assume that at some point you took a career test and that they told you like what job you might be best suited
Hmm.
for. For me, it was working in a funeral home. Inaccurate. Don't
No, no.
Terrible idea. They're like, and it was funny, like the logic to it is, well, you filled out everything that would say that you were good at working with people. And I was like, yeah, alive people.
Alive people. Oh my, why is it even an
Alive people.
option? Oh
not
my
not
God.
not to besmirch
Yeah, no,
unalive people.
of course. Yeah,
Not to
no
say
offense.
anything wrong. No offense to unalive people, but
Yeah.
I just didn't. But that was, yeah. So I
I mean,
don't.
I guess, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I don't assume that there was ever a box for debt influencer.
Absolutely. It was not on my bingo card for my life. It was not on like my MASH game, when you play that game
Hmm.
when you're a kid. Never. Because I genuinely never talked about it. It was not even like I talk about everything. You could look me up and go look at all the articles I've ever written, and there's so many, like there's not very few things I've not written about, right? Like I read about dating, I read about grief, I read about my life, I read about my grandmother, I read about like my, body. Like I read about
Yeah.
everything. Um, and that's what makes it so even more clear to me that I should be talking about this stuff now, because it's like if I'm not talking about it, and I will talk about just about anything, other people need to hear people talking honestly about it as well.
Yeah, and you were giving really good advice previously where it's agreed. Most people in social media will tell you don't respond, rise above, don't engage, don't get into your mentions, maybe just let it go. But there is a value intermittently and once in a while for shit talking a shit talker.
Yeah, it's like get the fuck out of here, you know.
But it shows people both the conviction in what you're doing and that you've got their back.
Totally.
That again, there's a balance to it. I am not saying just
Yeah.
just let off, a million expletives at a bunch of
Yeah. No,
randos.
no, which I've done probably in person. But I'll give you an example.
Same.
Like there's a big like sticking point for people on my social media is that I get my nails done. This is a big problem for people.
Hmm.
I was shocked. Like and there's a certain point where I was like realizing that sometimes I think the algorithm pushes out things that it might think are controversial, and
Uh,
those are the things that like maybe get a little bit more traction, which of course ends up getting you a more colorful range of comments and opinions. And I never do anything to be controversial. I'm just living my life, and sometimes people have a problem with the things that I'm doing. And people were really upset about getting my nails done. I'm in $18,000 of credit card debt, and I'm getting my nails done. And I was annoyed, and then I was like, this is a really an opportunity to spread my belief, which is that budgeting is a reprioritization of values. It's not about restriction. In any other,
yes.
aspect of life, whether it's if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to do anything, like cutting yourself completely off from the things that like make your little life feel like it's worth living is not the way to like long-term success. And so, was getting my nails done. I live in New York City. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, but I had stopped going to restaurants. It was like I found the place in my budget because this is
Hmm.
something that maybe it sounds frivolous to some people. It's something that's important to me. So I made it work. It's like, how can we discuss budgeting from not a place of scarcity, not a place of like, I have to get rid of all these things and not spend any of my money, to what are my values? What do I believe in? I want to travel to Europe and eat in a restaurant in Europe. So I don't really need to go meet my friends in Brooklyn for dinner at a restaurant that's like, sure, maybe it'll be good, but I would rather take that money I was going to use for that, put it in my travel account and use it at a place I know is going to be amazing in France. It's like that was a moment to be like budgeting, thinking about budgeting from a place of just scarcity is not a long-term way to change your mindset and really change your behavior. It's just going to make you feel restricted. So that was like, a troll providing a teaching moment, I guess.
And an easy thing to troll if you have not encountered that person or that topic or anything
Yeah.
else. You can be like, oh, well, but if we're being honest, there are really no examples psychologically of restriction allowing you to eventually achieve your end goal,
Yeah.
right? Whether
Yeah.
that be, overwhelming diet culture or this, like it's just impossible, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to remove all dopamine, or all joy, and then
Right.
expect someone to continue that process.
Right. Right. Right.
Seems
And
counterintuitive.
there's obviously different scenarios. Like some people are just have families and just make enough money or don't make enough money to get by and need to put food on their table. This is not the scenario that I'm talking about. I was
Yeah.
working, I had a job, I had a budget, nails were in my budget. Nails are always going to be in my budget. Maybe, until there's something else that is more important to me, and then we'll reassess at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's the other thing too, is there's a variety of factors, right? But if you are slowly paring things down, right,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
continuing to have joy in your life, I think that's
Yeah.
important. I think the other thing too is addressing, like, everybody's experience is different in this, right? We have different systems in place for us. There is bias. There are things that are there that, if you are a renter, it's a little harder to achieve credit. If there are things,
Right.
there
Right.
are a lot of systemic factors that can make
Right.
make that's the other thing too. It's not a level playing field, and it's harder for some than it is others.
No, and also to your point, you have to have credit to participate in many aspects of our society, and then
Hmm.
you have credit, and you that's it. Go forth into the world and have credit. You're not getting guidance on how to many people are not getting guidance on how to manage that credit, on what to do if suddenly you had a $12,000 limit and now congratulations, you have a $16,000 limit. You didn't even do anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
why? I don't want that. Leave me
No.
alone.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about the credit system. Just to spend a quick second on it, is if you just live with your money in a mattress, right? Not recommending it, by the way.
No.
But if you lived with your money in a mattress and you don't accrue credit, right? You go try and get a loan. They're like, well, we don't know.
Exactly.
We don't know what your credit score is, and you could be the most fiscally sound person in the world, but you haven't
Right.
demonstrated that, so they don't know, and it's all
Right.
about risk mitigation,
Absolutely. Right.
which is wild to think that it's like, okay, we need to see if you can navigate all of these impulses
And it's a
to trust
uniquely
you.
American problem, right? Like you hear stories about people
Yes.
coming to the US and they can't get homes because they've never had a credit card before because it's not a thing. It's like you have to have this thing that ends up that could be really dangerous to you, but it's required to be like an participant in our society. So
Yeah, it's
it's
also, yeah.
strange.
It's like both that and then house prices, and then you watch somebody on a home show. If you have the privilege of being able to just sit around and watch people on a home show, you're doing okay. But
Yeah.
a very unique problem. But if you're watching somebody on a home show and you're like, wait, how do you have that budget?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that running joke of like,
Oh, I can't.
person does X, person does Y. We have a $1.7 million budget for a home.
Yeah.
How?
I can't watch those shows because I live in a studio in Brooklyn and it just feels like an attack, a personal attack on me.
I would like to think that there is a correlation between people who live in Brooklyn and just any borough, right? And 0% attention to House Hunters International. Because they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no,
No.
how? How do you do
Mm.
this? No,
No,
thank
yeah,
you.
we need like support groups in our tiny apartments for those shows.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, as someone who lives in the Midwest and then comes into New York a lot, like, I have to try to explain to people. I'm like, yeah, no, this is what you can do, and this is available, and it's almost like I'm the House Under International person who's like coming in.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, here's this amazing thing, and they're like,
Yeah, the amount like when I'm feeling really like punishing myself, then that's when I get onto Zillow and just search houses in other states.
mhm.
That's when I'm feeling like I really want to punish myself for something.
Oh, that is the funniest thing. Like, when we talked about rabbit holes of like content, there's just that whole other rabbit hole of absurd houses that exist in the United States.
Yeah.
that are
Mm-hmm.
for sale, that are either creepy, weird, hilarious, or
Yeah.
just why? Just
Yeah.
why?
Just why? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Content is an interesting thing because you can come to it for one reason, right? So somebody might come to your content for the humor, for the the
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability, and then they stick around for like, oh, and I'm learning something here.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I hope that's true. I mean, I think I wasn't, again, it wasn't my goal, but I do think that in sharing my experience, people are gleaning some insight on how to maybe handle their own. And that's, I can't even imagine that. I'm not like, I'm not sure if people should really be taking my advice, but
Oh, I feel that. I've been in moments where people have, definitely wanted me to, and I was like, no, no,
yeah.
I don't, no, I don't have it all
Yeah,
together.
it's a lot of
There's no way.
responsibility.
Yeah,
Yeah. But then
please.
again, like none of us feel like we have it together. So maybe we all just do more than we think.
I envy the person who genuinely, not perceptively, but genuinely is like, yeah, I've got it all together. Why? What's going on?
Yeah, that person's suspicious to me.
Suspicious.
Yeah.
Jamie, when I close these episodes, I do something called Keep It Short. It's three
Okay.
questions. They are short questions. Your answers, though, can be however long you want them to be.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Question one, unrelated to what we've talked about, but yes, related. What do you think goes into, whether it's obviously your time writing, your time creating, just generally what goes into good content?
Authenticity is the only thing to me that matters when it comes to good content. You can smell it when it's, not true or when it's being forced. Um, and I don't want to see it. I don't want to make anything that's not true. I've tried and failed, and I just don't think that anything else really matters. And some people's authentic way of being in the world is aspirational,
Yeah.
but for me, it's like the only thing I ever care about doing is being honest. I will go like weeks without posting anything because I'm like I don't have anything that I think I feel comfortable sharing right now or that
Fair.
I feel like it will resonate right now. And that's just maybe that's I don't know if that's like me getting into my own head a little bit about it, but I genuinely feel like unless I have something that I know I want to say and I know is worth spending time telling people about, I would rather just wait. Like I don't feel this pressure to like post a ton just because that's like what the algorithm wants or whatever. It's like I'd rather have like 5 videos total that are all like really true to who I am than like a million videos a day.
And I think also just based on social media in general right now and things that are designed to like you're finding it through an algorithm rather than you're building a library of content that actually
Right.
works well with that too.
Yeah.
Um, question two, a weird question to ask, by the way, given that you are building something right now
Hmm.
currently around debt. But
Hmm.
question two, when do you know it will be the time to stop talking about debt?
God. um, I don't know if I'm a little nervous that it will never be.
Fair.
We're working on this project. I'm really excited about this audio project that my partner and I are working on. And I suspect it will involve talking about it a lot more and spreading the word about it a lot more. And I think it's going to be an ongoing process. I hope not to the extent that I'm talking about it now. And that once, the project that we're working on is out in the world and people can consume it and make their own opinions or have their own takeaways about it, then they can start talking about it with their communities, and then it'll sort of have a ripple effect as opposed to me continuing to talk about it forever. But there are other things that I would like to be talking about, other projects I'd like to be working on eventually at some point in my life. I suspect like it will be not for a long time, but that I'm not talking about debt, but I don't mind. It's okay with me.
That's good. I mean, but yeah, it's fluid, right? There is
Yeah.
no, but I think like any sane person, you would probably like to, move on eventually from the
Eventually,
topic
yeah.
or be in a better place. But
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, I could say I'll stop talking about it when I get out of it, but I don't think that that's true, because that's not the end. Everything is evolving and everything's a process.
Right, and sometimes the feedback we get, it tells us, hey, this is the road to go down, and that it's worth taking.
Yeah.
Um, Question three: person or piece or outlet or thing that was most influential in how you create content.
Oh man, that's a good and difficult question.
Yes.
Um, I'm stumped. Um, I don't know that it was like a piece of content or a post. It was like just talking to people in my real life,
Hmm.
and getting the feedback from them, and hearing what was going on with them, and sort of, I cracked open this portal that did not exist in my life before, which was that I didn't talk, because I wasn't talking about my money. I wasn't talking to anyone else about their money either,
Yeah.
and so, it inadvertently, the people in my life have become like a constant source of inspiration, because they're like, well, what do you think about this? And it's like, oh, if you're thinking about that, I think other people are probably thinking about that. Um, and, I mean, I've worked in journalism for a decade. I worked at HuffPost for 7.5 years, and I was really encouraged and free to have an opinion, and talk about things from a place that was maybe a bit more, pointed, or had a point of view. And that was always how I was anyway. I don't think I've ever like not had an opinion on something, but um, that really fostered my ability to feel grounded about what I have to say, and that, people might want to hear it, and that it's okay that it's not just like flat, that it has like a little bit of spice to it. And so I think just working there, and being able to foster that creativity, and understand how, what my voice is, whether it's writing or making videos or making content, really sounds like, and how I want it to sound, and what I think is the thing that people get something out of, more than just like, I don't know, not having a sense of humor, not having this like real authentic kind of vibe to it. I don't know if that's a okay answer.
It's a great answer. Also, for some reason, made me think of like somebody dry with no emotion, also saying click, rate, and subscribe.
Yeah, no,
I
yeah,
don't
it
know
doesn't
why.
work. Yeah,
Does it?
click
It does,
follow me for more information. It's like it just
right. And
doesn't
then
work.
unfollow and then refollow so that the algorithm pulls it
Yeah,
through. All of
please,
that.
please, but please follow me. Please follow me.
All of that in the bio and links included.
Awesome.
Jamie, this has been wonderful. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much. It was great. Oh, awesome.